Welcome everyone. Today we are starting our third chapter. Actually, we did start a bit of discussion yesterday, but I would start from there right now. In the for third chapter, what we are doing is earlier to that we have explored the reference to context to the project management in chapter one. Chapter two was more specific to project management, but it was about the process groups. It was about the in organizational influences. And the most important topic we discussed in the very end was the project life cycle. So after we have done that, we move on to this chapter. This is chapter number 3, project management processes. And here we were talking about what is a process. And I completed that. I said process is a set of activities which is done for a specific purpose, and there is a deliverable at the end of a process. Every process has to start and it needs some inputs. Then we have to process those inputs into outputs. So we need certain tools and techniques to do that. Then we said that process could be a part of a operation or even a project, but it is more akin to operations because, like operations, processes are infinite in nature, they are continuous in nature, because the theory behind a process is of continuous improvement. That is the Edward Deming theory, which we call the Deming cycle, or continuous improvement cycle of plan, do, check, and act. If we apply this cycle to a process improves. And this improvement is theoretically continuous in nature and is infinite. And I discussed how we can explore the boundaries of knowledge and we can create new knowledge while we improve our processes. So generally processes are infinite in nature. But why do we have processes in our projects? Is because projects will be doing a lot many things which we normally do in our operations. So these are like subroutines, these are like libraries, these are like the recipes we keep using in our normal life, and we may have to repeat a lot many things, put them in certain order to do our projects and to create the unique product of our project. Then we talked about the organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors, which we already in chapter number 2 we have talked in detail, but in short they may be called OPAs and EEFs. And even then, and there I mentioned that these are the two things which are going to be required for each and every process of project management, right from beginning till end. But of course, in the starting processes, in the process of initiation, planning, mostly they will be used more. And as we near the end of the project, those processes will have comparatively lesser need for these two inputs, but it is not a rule that they will not be present in the closing processes or monitoring and control processes. So these may be required anywhere and everywhere. You see, as far as organizational process assets are concerned, we are requiring the policies, procedures, formats, and a lot many things. Everything we need to do in the project, in any process, we will be requiring organizational process assets. And as far as enterprise environmental factors are concerned, the internal and external factors may be applicable to us at any time during any process, but naturally in the beginning, because we do not have anything else, so we have to rely more on them. And towards the end of the project, we may have a lot many things as input, and maybe at some time we have lesser reliance on any one of these two. But it will seldom happen that you would not have both of these simultaneously as input into any process. I am talking about the 47 processes of project management. And as I explained to you yesterday, uh, project management processes and product oriented processes have to be married together to do your projects. But PMBOK, though it agrees that these product oriented processes also have to be done, but PMBOK does not cover the product oriented processes. It only talks about the 47 project management processes, which you can group under 5 process groups: initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, and close. So we are more concerned about those. So this is the responsibility of the project team to select the appropriate processes required to meet the project objectives. If you remember, I have already told you that these 47 processes are not all mandatory. They are recommended by PMI. They are good practices. If you do them, you definitely will benefit from them. But it is not necessary that you will require them. Depending upon the situation of your project, you may require certain processes more than others. And some of the processes which are shown in these 47 processes, you may not even require sometimes. So who decides what to use and what not to use? This is kind of a option available to you, and you and your team, project manager and his team, they decide the appropriate processes required to meet the specific project objectives in your case. So what you do is you use a defined approach that can be adopted to meet the requirements. So that approach you decide yourself. As a project manager, you decide your approach, and according to that approach, you select the appropriate processes, and it is not necessary, not required that you do all the 47 processes of project management. But if you do, it might be good for you. It might not be. So this is your decision. Establish and maintain appropriate communication with engagement with the stakeholders. Stakeholders, as we will learn further, are very important to us because it is not only the customer or the boss or higher management whom we have to please. We have to please everyone. As a project manager, you are to interact with the stakeholders all the time, and they all will have different requirements. It is not only the customer requirements you're working on. We are working on the requirements of all the stakeholders, and we have to understand and comply with the requirements to meet stakeholder needs and expectations. We'll talk more about it. Then when you start planning and start doing your job, uh, you are constantly going to face certain constraints, certain limitations, certain restrictions. And when you are stuck in one of those, you may find that if I fix it, something else becomes a constraint or something else is being affected due to that. So if I want to fix this, I have to affect another thing. So these such like constraints, which are actually the competing demands, you have to create a balance in. These are scope, time, cost, quality, resources, risks, and even more than those things like communication sometimes becomes a constraint. Something else becomes a constraint. So there is a long list of constraints, and this is just a few mentioned here. 7, 8 are mentioned here. So when we are trying to produce our product, service, or result, we have to, balance the competing demands of these constraints. And this is normal for every project manager. Every project manager has to go through this. If you were initially asked to build a house of 3 rooms, and later on you are told you have to change the scope from 3 to 10 rooms, naturally, the whole of your planning goes for a fix. You have to replan everything. Your time will be affected, your cost will be affected, your resources will be affected, more risks will be there, and so on and so forth. So just by changing any one of the constraints, all other constraints get affected. uh, Previously, in olden days, not very old, but people used to call these constraints as triple constraints or iron triangle. But I did not want to use these words because these are obsolete now. There is no iron triangle. There are no triple constraints. That concept is completely vanished. Now we understand that there are many constraints. As I have just shown you, scope, time, cost, quality, resource, risk, communication, sometimes more other things could be your constraints. So just ignore this that there are triple constraints. There are no triple constraints. Triple constraint philosophy is no more. Therefore, you must understand that there are certain things which constrain the options of your project, and they could be anything, but they affect each other. Here we talk about the two kinds of processes, the project management processes and product oriented processes. We discussed it yesterday. We talked about it. We said project management processes are those which are required to ensure the effective flow of project throughout its life cycle. You see, this is not about producing the product only. This is about ensuring the effective flow of project. We want to bring efficiency and effectiveness to the project, and we have done certain management tools. We have used certain tools and techniques and applied our skills and capabilities to different knowledge areas, and thus we achieve that efficiency, that effectiveness. Naturally, our ultimate aim of the project is to produce that product. Therefore, it is not only the efficiency of project management which matters, it is also the processes involved in developing the product. So product oriented processes will also have to be done and must be done alongside the project management processes. And if we can tie them up well enough, we can marry them up properly, then we can achieve the effectiveness and efficiency as well as we can create the product. Otherwise, you could be doing a lot many things efficiently and effectively, but ultimately there is nothing being produced because you are not employing any technical processes. You are not doing anything right. You don't know your job as far as the building of the product is concerned. So without product oriented processes, you may not be able to produce the product. Specify and create the product is the job of the product oriented process. They typically are defined by the project lifecycle. When we defined the project lifecycle, we clarified this point and we said the project lifecycle is a sequence of certain portions of the work which we call phases, and these phases are essentially to be in sequence, surgically separated from each other, where each phase is treated as a separate project with its own deliverable. Every phase will have its own charter and its own deliverable, while the project overall will also have its own charter and its own deliverable. So this project life cycle will vary from project to project, from the application area or whatever, and this might also be dependent on the product life cycle which we studied earlier. So within the product life cycle, you may be responsible for handling a project for which you have created the project life cycle. Scope of the project cannot be defined without basic understanding of how to create the specified product. So until and unless we are sure about the product, we cannot, just by the dint of good project management processes, and we don't know what the product is, and we say, well, we will create a charter, we will do good planning, we will do execution. So by just doing all those things, you can't really produce anything. Therefore, yesterday what we were discussing, I was emphasizing to get out of the mere thought of having planning as a phase, having initiation as a phase, because you will get nothing out of them. I understand when Shahid was saying that he did not mean exactly that he won't be doing in project management processes, any product oriented processes. Uh, Actually, we take the product oriented process as granted, that that's what we know. We know what we will have to do. But if you know something, why can't you properly manage it and marry it up with the project management process? Yes, we are studying project management. Yes, there has to be a charter. Yes, there has to be a planning, and there are a lot many things which are to be done. But do not just start emphasizing on the project management part of it. Product is more important, and project management is just to ensure the effectiveness and efficiency. Therefore, product oriented processes, project management processes, and product oriented processes have to go together, they have to merit together ultimately to do the project. But as far as PMBOK is concerned, PMBOK, whereas it does agree that they have to, in the last sentence, you can see project management processes and product oriented processes overlap and interact throughout the life of a project. It does agree with that. But it also says that this specific standard describes only the project management processes. But again, you should not be mistaken by this that these are the only processes to be done in the project. No, product oriented processes had also to be done during the project, but as far as this body of knowledge is concerned, they are outside of the scope of this standard, but they should not be ignored by the project manager. We already understand the definition of a good practice. We said whatever is given in the standard, there is a general agreement that if these things are done, they will enhance the chances of success. But at the same time, we do agree that they were not mandatory. So you must have knowledge of them. You must know how to do them. These are the good practices. But it is the decision of the project manager and his team which good practices are which processes from the PMBOK are you going to be using. So ultimately, it is not the responsibility of PMI, it is the responsibility of project manager and his team in collaboration with the team is always responsible for determining which processes are appropriate. And when I say processes, I mean project management processes as well as product oriented processes. He has to pick and choose. He has to marry them up and the appropriate degree of rigor. Maybe you feel that I do not need to use procurement policy processes in a lot of detail. Therefore, I will just have them, you know, scan through. You do not want to use them very deliberately, but still you define a lower degree of rigor for them. But maybe as far as the time management processes are concerned, you are more concerned about time, so you do it more in detail. So for each process, uh, project manager and his team will decide whether it is to be used or not, and if at all it is to be used, to what level of, to what degree of rigor it has to be used. At the end, this is all an integrative undertaking in which the project and product processes both are appropriately aligned and connected with each other, and they are properly coordinated. It is to facilitate the coordination. Only when the product and project oriented processes are married together, they are in an integrative undertaking. They are properly integrated. Only then project is set for success. Actions taken during one process typically affect that process and other related processes. You will have to define a sequence what we'll do first and which product oriented process will affect which project management process. So there is a relation between the processes. If there is, we take any action in one process, that it is not the only, not only that process which is affected, but the results of that action could be sounded to the next processes as well. These process interactions often require trade-offs among project requirements and objectives. Like you see, if you are told to reduce the scope of the project, lot many things will be affected in your project. Like, we talked about the balancing of the various project constraints. Or as I said, that other processes may be affected by this. So these are actively manages, project manager actively manages these interactions to meet sponsor, customer, and other stakeholder requirements. But whatever we are doing in a project, this is to satisfy the requirements of so many people. The customer is there, our sponsor is there, and various other stakeholders. So we have to keep all of them together. We have to understand their needs and requirements, and we have to actively manage them. This is again a very important subject, that stakeholders are very important to us, and we not only have to know their needs and requirements first, but we also have to keep them monitored, because requirements do change. Sometimes a process or a set of processes will need to be iterated several times in order to achieve the required outcome. What does that mean? What if I am doing something and I could not produce the required result out of that process? Should I leave it there? No, I will have to go back and do it again. And I'll keep doing it again and again and again until it is done right. And ultimately, the desired product or the desired requirements are fulfilled. So that is where we have to iterate several processes several times, but this iteration is not of continuous improvement nature. It does improve in every iteration. We improve our output, but we do not want to improve our output beyond what is required. Therefore, as soon as the requirements of the stakeholders are met with respect to that product, we stop. We do not improve it any further, because that would be beyond the scope of the project, and we do not have funds and permissions to go beyond those requirements. As we already discussed in the previous chapter, that organizational strategy, organizational governance, this all affects the project, and projects have to exist within an organization. Therefore, they have to abide by the rules and regulations of the organization. They require data from the organization or the operations of the organization, and when they deliver something, those capabilities are delivered back to the organization. The project processes may generate some information to improve the management of future projects or organizational process assets, but they will be recorded in the organizational process assets for future usage. We will create some data, we'll create some lessons learned and all that as the result of this project, that would be for the guidance of future projects. Nature of project management processes. PMBOK guides describes the nature of project management processes in terms of integration between the processes. First, we have talked about the integration of the product-oriented processes and the project management processes, and also all of the processes selected within the project to be done, they all have to be properly integrated, as if every different process should not be creating something different from others, and the interactions which are required to be amongst these various processes must be properly defined and must be really very clear, and at the end of the day they should be able to serve the ultimate purpose. The end product must be properly integrated. Project management process are grouped into 5 categories, as we call them the project management process groups, and we have already talked about them a bit, like initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, and closing process groups. So naturally, there's a brief definition of each is given here. Initiation is performed to define a new project. So this is the start of a project. But initiation is also done for every phase. You have to go through all the 5 process groups in each of the phases. So every phase has to be initiated, planned, executed, monitored, controlled, and closed. Therefore, there would be a charter for every phase. There will be a charter for the whole project, and then there will be a charter for every phase. The whole project will have the end product, and every phase will have its own product, which could be reused or should be usable for the next phase. But these are not the phases. As we have discussed yesterday, initiation process group is process group. It is not a phase. Planning is not a phase. So all of these five are the various process groups. Actually, yesterday's discussion, uh, this is a big confusion in the market because there are various types of life cycles. In IT and various other industries, the thing which is called a life cycle, not a project life cycle, but a life cycle, is slightly different in nature. Here we are talking about the project life cycle. So some of the authors have done what? They have adopted that concept of having whatever kinds of life cycles, and they have imposed it into the project. And because project life cycle is a different breed, so they start calling it a project management life cycle, which I don't agree at all. So some authors like Rita Mulcahy and a few others, they say there are two types of life cycles in a project life cycle and a project management life cycle. I do not agree with this. PMI do not agree with this. This is wrong. There is only one life cycle in a project. That is a project life cycle. What they call project management life cycle, they consider initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, and closing as the phases of that project management life cycle. But this is just a confusion. Even if somebody wants to call it like that, that has no practical implication on the project, and therefore we should not get ourselves confused by calling the process groups as phases or the whole of this thing as a project management process group. There is no project management process group. There is only the project life cycle, uh, and that's what we have already talked about. Project management processes are presented as discrete elements and well-defined interfaces. We are going to talk about 47 project management processes, and each one of these processes is discussed separately as a discrete item, a separate item. What is getting into it, these are the inputs. What is getting out of it, it is the output. And whatever we do inside of this process is the use of different tools and techniques, and it clearly defines that what goes out of a process and what goes into another process. So how the things are traveling amongst these project management processes. This is just to make you understand the flow of various things amongst the project amongst these processes, and how they flow from one place to other and what happens in a project. This might not be exactly true, as we understand, projects are different from each other. Projects are unique. So there might be certain things, but which are different from what is given in PMBOK. Maybe you are not being that discrete. You are doing many things together, and you do not want to call them separate processes. That is your business. We are not interfering in that. But we must understand that this is how PMBOK suggests. And if we are, you know, putting together two or three processes and putting them under one person to do these jobs, then he must understand that for doing each and every element of that job, he might have to use different methods and different tools and techniques. So he must understand all those tools and techniques. This is mostly seen in time management, planning, and cost management, where a lot many things are done together by project managers normally, whereas they are supposed to be done one after the other. Anyways, I'm not going into that detail here. In practice, all of these processes which we talk about in project management, they overlap and interact in ways that are not completely detailed in this document. So all the possible ways these processes can interact with each other, they cannot be discussed in this document, because that could make millions of possibilities and a very long discussion, which we do not want to get involved in. We just want to understand the basic concept how this framework works. Most experienced project management practitioners recognize there is more than one way to manage a project, and this is what the truth is. You must have the knowledge, and then you use your ingenuity how to do your work. So this is completely on to you how you want to manage your project. But trust me, if you keep the knowledge at the back of your mind, don't religiously follow the knowledge. Knowledge is there for your guidance. So that knowledge will guide you what is right and what is wrong. Rest, you are at liberty to do whatever you feel like in your project. The required process groups and their processes are guides for applying appropriate project management skills, knowledge and skills during the project. Application of project management processes is iterative, and many processes are repeated during the project. Why are they repeated? Because we are being unable to meet the requirements of the stakeholders, and therefore we have to go back and maybe we have to repeat a number of processes as if we can come up to the level where we require to deliver that product or meet that requirement of the customer. We already have talked about this twice before, that there is a kind of iteration just which I just was saying, and that iteration happens within the project. If project is considered as a big process, then we have a cycle like plan, do, check, and act. We plan, execute, monitor, and control. So these four things are iterative, and if we are unable to produce what we were supposed to be producing, we will keep iterating until and unless we can produce that. So this is an inner cycle. But before we start a project, we have to have some initiation process which pushes us into this cycle, and the revolution starts. And when we have delivered the goods, I mean, we have met all the requirements after a number of iterations, the output, we should stop, revolving in this cycle, and we should get out of it now. And when this is the time when the closing processes come into action, and through the closing process, we ensure the project is formally closed. So this is the iteration mechanism within the project, where these process groups, planning, execution, monitoring, and control, they have a lot of interaction going on, a lot of iterations going on, but that is just for the purpose of meeting the customer requirements. Project management process groups are linked by the output which are produced. So when something comes out of a process, it must be reused by some other process, and this is how the things keep revolving and keep getting processed over time. The process groups are seldom either discrete or one-time events. As I have already talked about, though we describe each process as a discrete item, but these are not actually discrete. There's a lot of parallelism. There is a lot of continuous, simultaneous happenings amongst these processes. Many processes could be happening simultaneously, but we need to attain the knowledge of each discrete process. So they are seldom happening discretely or one-time event. Like, first I will complete all the initiation process group and then I'll go for planning. That is not possible. I cannot complete the planning and go to execution, or complete the execution and go to monitoring and control, because they will have to overlap a lot. They are overlapping activities that occur throughout the project. The output of one process generally becomes an input to another process, or is a deliverable of the project itself, or the sub-project, or the project phase. Deliverables at the sub-project or project level may be called incremental deliveries or deliverables. Whatever is produced at the end of a phase, this is the end of this increment, and this is the result of that increment. So we can say that we have produced this much so far, and production can only be counted with the completion of a phase. And as I was saying, all these 5 process groups are actually having a lot of overlap. You can see the life cycle of each one of these process groups. In this diagram, in this graph, you can see if time is at the x-axis and level of the process interaction is on the y-axis, you can see initiation reaching its peak. Initiation reaching its peak somewhere here, and then it is being, ultimately finished. The initiation would almost be finished by the 1/4 of the project. That just an approximation. While the initiation has happened, planning will also start, but planning will reach its peak at this point. And at this point, if you look at it, execution and monitoring and control both are happening. When planning is at its peak, the execution and monitoring and control must be happening. Closing has yet not started, but initiation might have finished. If we look at that peak of execution, we see still some planning and monitoring and control is happening, and some processes have started closing, and so on and so forth. So they have their own life cycle. Each one of these process groups, they have their own mechanism. But at any time in the life of the project, all of these processes are happening. Some are at their peak, some are diminishing, some are rising, but these things are happening. To make this thing more understandable to you, I would take the example of execution and monitoring and control. Do we do the monitoring and control when the execution has finished? Yes, any ideas?
So the monitoring and controlling also deals with changes during the execution, and also after the execution, the monitoring and controlling is done to get the better results, get the final details.
Exactly. Uh, Actually, as soon as the execution starts, we must have the monitoring and control mechanism in place, because we can't leave execution orphaned. If there is anything wrong, who will fix the problem? Monitoring and control should have started immediately after execution, as if they can receive the change request and process them and correct if there is anything wrong with the planning. Although we do a very detailed planning in the beginning, but whenever there is any change request, the plan changes. So planning is also a continuous process. When we initiate the project, at that point, some planning has started. And if you believe it, some execution has also started. Because project manager has been mobilized. Maybe he mobilizes 1 or 2 members of his team also during execution for understanding this charter, and also for identifying the stakeholders, which we will study that these are the activities which are done in any session initiating process group. So project manager, if he is mobile, if he is available, then he is doing something and he is executing something, and there is planning going on as well. So uh, we cannot call them as project life cycle phases at all. They are not, because you cannot draw lines and say that initiation has finished here and none of the planning or execution has yet started. Okay, let's move on to the process groups. Before we can start this, I want you to uh, ask any questions so far. because this I want to emphasize more on this thing. Yes, please. Do we have Shahid here?
Yes, sir, I'm here. I'm listening. I'm watching.
Okay. Shahid, are you okay with that? The discussion we did yesterday and today the explanation which I am providing right now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm comfortable.
Okay. Anyone else has any queries or questions? Okay, if there are no questions, I will move on with this. Now, I want your full attention here. This is something, if you understand this chapter properly, if you understand the interaction of all the processes, then it will be a piece of cake for you when you are going through the remaining chapters. All the remaining chapters are actually based on this. This explains how the things flow in project management, and therefore, if you have properly understood it, you have understood the whole project management. But I do not ask you to remember everything by heart. Do not remember anything by heart. Just understand everything properly. You must have logic established and understood how the things are flowing. Now, I don't know if this screen is completely visible to all of you, but I have subsequent screens in which this slide will be further improved. Can you see this?
Yes, sir, it's visible, quite visible,
Yes, sir.
and
Yes.
But I'm not
on
be
mobile even we can enlarge it.
I'm not be discussing on the enlargement. I will first be making some discussion here where it is not enlarged because I have to show you the whole picture. So how comfortable are you with this? Even if everything is not very visible, I will read it out to you and I will explain how the things are happening. So let us look at this chart. It is a matrix. In the columns, we have 5 process groups. In the rows, we have 10 knowledge areas. And at the cross section of the process groups and knowledge areas, we have certain processes written there. And there is a numbering system with them as well. You can observe that the numbering system is according to the knowledge area. The 4 is a number for integration management, and all its processes in front of it in the row, you can see 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and so on. So this is integration. These are all the processes of scope. In front of scope, they start with planning. From planning, 5.1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 and 6 are in monitoring and control. Time management, we have 6 processes in planning and 7th process is in monitoring and control. So, can anyone explain to me why have we started from number 4?
Because, sir, it is
Because
to formalize
Yeah?
the management. It is the start of the project. I mean, the formal project, because management will hand over you the drafted or the finalized charter, and from here you can go forward because it will be all financial details, scope, and other key elements are mentioned there, and you can start from there. Other, further it can be enriched as you go on.
But that is not a justification for starting from number 4? Why are we starting from
Number
number 4?
number 4 is actually 4.1 project charter,
Yes, why it is 4.1? What about 3.1, 3.2, 3.3? Where are they?
because the first three it is this chart is designed with reference to the PIM book 5. So the first three chapters are the introductory chapter or the explanation of the framework and the basic explanation. So it is starting from chapter 4. So it is 4 reflect actually chapter 4 of PIM
Wonderful.
book 5.
Wonderful. You have got it. Actually, these are the chapter numbers. If you have studied any standard, ISO or anything, you see the chapter numbers, the clause number, and everything. Even paragraph numbers are very important. So in this standard, we go by the chapter. First three chapters, as Shahid has just explained, were not actually the knowledge areas. They were just explanation of certain things. The fourth chapter actually starts talking about each one of the knowledge area. Fourth chapter is integration, fifth is scope, sixth is time, and so on. So all the processes discussed in integration, the processes of integration, they are numbered 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and so on. So here you can clearly see how many processes are there of integration. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Scope, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Time, we have got 7 processes. Cost, we have got 4 processes. Quality, 3 processes. Human resource, we have 4 processes. Communication, we have 3 processes. Risk, we have 6 processes. Project procurement, we have 4. And stakeholder, we have 4. Can somebody sum it all up and tell me what is the total? 6 and 6, 12. 12 and 7, 19. 19 and 4, 23.
24.
36, 30, 33, 39, 43, and 47.
47.
So there are 47 processes which I have been talking about from chapter 2. There are 47 processes of project management. So these are all the processes listed in this one table. So this is all you need to understand. Moreover, this we have seen them from the knowledge area perspective, and every row is one knowledge area. And now we know how many processes are there in each of the knowledge areas, and the total will be equal to 47. Now let us look at it from the process group perspective. Just forget about the knowledge area and look at the initiation process group. Look down in the column of the process initiation process group. You see one process is develop project charter, and then there is a big gap, and then we have got identify stakeholder. So there are only 2 processes in initiation. In planning, we can see a lot of processes, everywhere. There are, at least one process is there. In integration, we have one process. Scope, we have 4. Time, we have 6 processes in planning. In cost, we have 3 processes in planning. Then 1. Risk, we have 5 processes, and 1 in procurement and 1 in stakeholder. In general, what I can say is that planning is extremely important. We have to do thorough planning. Better the plan, easier would be the execution and monitoring and control. That is my first deduction. Then if I go back to initiation, that means there is not much to do in initiation. We just have to do few jobs like developing the charter and identifying the stakeholder. Rest we have nothing to do with scope, time, cost, quality, and so on. So there is only the role of integration and stakeholder to play during initiation. We will discuss more about it later, but as far as planning is concerned, there are no gaps. Every knowledge area has to be planned and to be planned in detail, even if we have to employ more than one process. Where there are only one process for each knowledge area, I don't say it is not detailed planning, it is, but our emphasis is more on scope, planning the scope in much more detail, time, cost, and risk. These are the four items which have more than one processes in planning. So they are planned in much more detail. Like you see, time has got 6 processes in planning. Scope has 4, cost has 3, and risk has 5. Remaining all processes in planning are just one process per knowledge area. Does that mean these are more important than others? Yes, it is. And if I look at execution, naturally whatever has been planned will have to be executed. But it is very strange to see that there are processes there in execution. Everywhere we have got at least one process or more than one processes. But there are certain gaps. Wasif, can you tell me what are these gaps? Which knowledge areas are not being done in execution?
Project scope,
Scope,
the project time management,
time,
project cost management,
cost.
then the 11th and 4th project risk management.
Right. So, can you make out a reason why they are not done in execution? Why they are not being executed?
Because scope has nothing to do with execution. Same with the time and cost, we have already done through it. The cost has already been decided. There's nothing to do with the execution. And same is the risk. Once you've decided all the risk, you have to go through it.
Okay. So, you mean to say that we have planned them well. Then, if you have planned something so well, don't you execute them?
We do execute them, but their most probably their outcome or the result has already been done.
Yes,
In their
but how,
respective
where will you execute it? Where will you execute it?
at the time of their previous process
Okay.
or the next coming one.
Right. Let me take the opinion from Atif. Where do we execute scope, time, and cost?
Sir, scope, time, and cost, actually, we have already discussed in planning process.
We have
So,
planned them.
as it is already, yes, we have
planned
already
them, not
planned it.
executed.
But scope, it is like once you have planned, we are going to, yeah, this is confusing.
It is.
We might just monitor it. Yeah. The execution part of it is actually we are going to monitor and control the scope, the time management, the cost, and then the project quality that I mentioned in 23. Same is the case with the we will just keep on monitoring and controlling it.
Okay.
This is the part of the execution.
I tend to agree with it, but my problem is still there. Though we have planned it, though we will monitor and control them, but when are we executing them? And how are we executing them? Adris?
No idea, sir, actually.
No idea. Okay. Shahid?
Sir, I think when we were in a planning process group, the umbrella process or the project management is there. Develop project management plan. It is including the scope as well. I mean, that plan includes scope, that plan includes the time management and all those things. And we will be partially controlling, as far as execution is concerned, that would be in 4.3, where we will manage the project work. And in detail, it will be managed in iteratively throughout the process group, in the monitoring and controlling process group.
Okay.
Which is like we will validate it or we will control scope 5.5 or 5.6.
Right.
We cannot, we will validate it, we will control it. It cannot be executed.
Okay.
Likewise for time and likewise for the cost.
Okay. Well done. This is the right answer. But everybody was saying it right, but you were unable to trace it how and when these things will be executed. So Shahid provided you a very good answer that once the scope, time and cost, I'm not talking about risk right now. Once the scope, time and cost has been properly planned in detail, they cannot be executed separately. They have to be integrated into the project management plan, and the thing which will be executed would be the project management plan, and that would execute in 4.3, direct and manage project work. So that will take on the responsibility for execution of scope, time and cost jointly, integratively. That is why we do not have any executing processes for scope, time and cost. Later on, monitoring and control will handle how the job has been done. This is the explanation for scope, time and cost. As far as risk has a different justification. Now, who can help me to find that justification? जी अदरीज आप कुछ बताएंगे? Why risk is not being executed?
So usually the risks evolve means with the passage of time. Means at the start of the project we identify some risks, but we make some backup plan for that one. But with the passage of time means when we get different types of other risks, then that risk will also be incorporated here, I think in 4.3.
4.3, okay. Okay. As far as risk is concerned, risk is an uncertainty. We try to find what can happen with us, what can happen good or bad with us throughout the life of the project. Although we cannot predict the future, but we try to find whatever could happen to us, and we plan very deliberately. In planning, we do the identification, we do the qualification, quantification, and the response planning for all the risks. But as far as the risks are concerned, they are not executable because they are uncertain to happen. They may or may not happen. So if I am not really certain about something that it will happen or not, how would I execute it? As far as the activities I have designed in time management and scope and cost and everything, those I am certain about. We will have to do them. So anything which I am certain about, only that can be executed. Which I am not certain, I cannot execute it. I can only keep a watch on it, whether it is about to happen or not. If it is about to happen, then I will include into my execution. So basically, control risk is the process to keep a watch on the risks, whether they are about to happen or not. And if at all they do, then you are right in saying that it would then be the responsibility of direct and managed project work to execute those risks, actions on those risks which have which are likely to appear in near future. So risk response plan will be actually executed through direct and managed project work. That is the explanation for you. Now there are changes in the 6th edition, although you need not know them because you're preparing on the 5th edition. You go and pass your exam on the 5th edition. Don't pollute your mind with 6th edition details, but just for your information, just do not remember what I am saying. They have added a new process to execution for risk, and that is execute risk response plan. That process will then be responsible, rather control risks, telling direct and managed project work to execute the response. Now it will be in future, in the 6th edition, it will directly be telling execute risk response plan to take action. But again, that will not automatically take any action. That will wait for control risk to find whether the risk has come near to us or not. Rest everything beside scope, time, cost and risk, everything has got at least one process in execution. In integration, we have got direct and managed project work. In quality, we have got perform quality assurance. And again, not to pollute your mind, but they have changed the name of perform quality assurance in 6th edition. They call it manage quality now. But again, just rub off this information. I should not be telling you. Just remember it is perform quality assurance. As far as human resource is concerned, we do not have just one process, we have 3 processes there. This is the only process knowledge area in execution which has more than one processes, rather 3 processes here. Why are there 3 processes? I will explain it later. Communication, we manage the communication. In procurement, we conduct the procurement. And in stakeholder, we manage the stakeholder engagement. So this is for the execution. Now, if you look at the monitoring and control column, you will see almost every knowledge area is represented in monitoring and control except one. And which one is that? Which one is that?
Human resource is not
Human resource.
Integration management.
project human resource management.
Okay. So can someone explain why human resource should not be controlled?
Because resources cannot be controlled.
Wonderful.
I
No,
mean,
resources can be controlled. Resources can be controlled. Human resource.
human resource. Yeah, obviously there are 3 types of resources.
Right.
Actually, sir, in human resource management, there are some policies. Means company has some certain policies which are only managed by the human resource department. So I think it's not under the project there are some certain HR policies are there which only controlled by the HR peoples. So
you see, Adris, that is not the sufficient reason, because it could be a projectized environment and project manager may be dealing with the HR. So that is not a sufficient reason. But
so the thing is then the project manager is the only person who is controlling all resources on his side. So that's why because this monitoring and controlling process is a different department which is under the project managers, but this means that I think project manager will be the only person who will be monitoring this human resource things.
Right. You see, the basic reason is the same which was already discovered, and that is, if it was resources, it was stores, it was machinery, it was tools, then we can control it by issuing it properly, by maintaining it, by managing it. But human resources are alive, they have got emotions, and it is not only putting the people on job, but it is also to affect their motivation. So this is just not controlling human beings is not like parts or machines or stores. Therefore, the word control is not used for human beings. They are to be managed. Human resources are managed. They are not controlled. Now, again, there is a change in sixth edition. I am sorry if I'm, referring to sixth edition time and again, but you see, you must know and you will know ultimately. They have changed the name of human resource management knowledge area to resource management now. Now it is not only responsible for human resources, it is responsible for all types of resources. And therefore, they have now added a control resources process in monitoring and control. But manage project team still stays in execution. Why? Because still human resources will not be controlled by monitoring and control. Even according to sixth edition, other resources will be controlled in monitoring and control, and human resource will be managed during execution. Now, this is another question, why human resources are to be managed in execution? Because management is done when a thing is happening. Control is done when a thing has happened. While we are getting the job done from these people, we are instructing them, we are rewarding them or punishing them, we are doing things with them, which is included in management of these human resources. So the three processes here are: first, the acquire project team; second, to develop the project team, make them ready for the work they are supposed to be doing; and third is the manage the project team. So once we have prepared the team to work and we have put them on the work, then we just have to look at them, we just have to manage them while they do for the things given in 4.3, direct and manage project work. Whatever is their responsibility has been assigned, now they will work as per the schedule. And the person looking at them, may it be the HR person or the project manager or whomsoever, he will be responsible to manage the project team. But naturally, there is a problem here. How can we manage the project team if we do not know the results of monitoring and control? Maybe the person whom I am not very happy with has done perfectly well, and monitoring and control says that his job was okay. Then why am I trying to punish this person? I should not. So my management of project team must take into account the results of monitoring and control. We will discuss that later, how results from monitoring and control are going to impact my judgment when I'm managing my project team. So that is more intricate. Therefore, in execution, we have got more about human resource management. We have three processes. Now, as far as quality is concerned, why are we having a quality assurance process here and a quality control process in monitoring and control? Anyone?
Sir, one is the factory test, the other is the QC control.
QC. Now, how do they differ?
Sir, while executing, it will be a kind of a FAC or you can say SIT test, internal factory test, and once it is executed, once the product is moved from their production house to or still in controlling, it is the quality control department will activate, and then maybe the product will be checked individually. So the 6.3 process is the QC process. The other is the uh, internal testing.
Okay, Shahid,
Sir,
Has
tell me what will you check
execution
in
is
that
perhaps
test?
related to the engine. Okay.
Wasif,
Sorry, it's a choppy voice.
Wasif, we can't hear you properly. Can you say it again?
In execution, it is actually the ongoing process. Like we are making a denim pant, and we need to have a quality control during the production that all the technical aspects of the product is met. Then in the monitoring and control, it is about the audit. Once the shipment is complete, then in monitoring and control, an audit will be take place after taking out a sample out of it, and we just check it whether all the basic elements have been completed in the whole shipment or not.
Right. So both of you are saying almost the same thing, that you need to have some interim.
Like sir, let me give you an example. If we are running a software house, and if a module is prepared, then that module is internally tested first. That is called the factory testing or the integration testing. And if
Okay.
we found any bug or any threat or any module which is not, the functionality is not completed, then it will again go to the iterative process and it will complete. Once it is delivered internally to the customer, the customer might check it. That is the other process. Now it's the monitoring, which is not controlled by you. I mean, the other side of the party, or maybe the third party. A lot of companies hire the third party, so that they will do the 6.3. Which, if they find any error in it, that will be again. You can say these are the bugs identified by the customer, which needs to be fixed on. I think talking about
sir,
that.
can I explain? Can I say something?
जी, जी, जी.
Actually, means if I take example of my projects, means as a construction projects. In construction projects, means for quality assurance, means every company has his own rules and regulations, and they impose these rules and regulations on the sites, and they want to see means whether the work is being carried out on the site as per these rules and regulations. Means it's the internal company assurance, means whatever the documents company has internally, whether it's being implemented on the sites or not. And in quality control, they check means whether the work on the site is being carried out as per the specifications or not.
Okay. So we have the opinion. Adris has said that this quality assurance is about the processes and quality control is about the product. Whereas both of you are adamant that still this is the quality control both ways. Quality assurance is also internal testing and outside, the end testing is quality control. But I would insist that if you are looking at the product, you are doing the quality control, no matter how and when you are doing, even if it is a internal testing. If you are checking the product in any way or in any form, this is quality control. What about your processes? Adris is right. The processes through which the product is being produced, that process, checking that process is called quality assurance. What do you say?
Because processes means, for example, our quality department, they have constructed some processes for managing the document control system, for managing the means documents, and actually it's a different types of documents are there, which means they have created, and they do audit occasionally, means whether the assurance is being carried out on the as per the company policy or not. These things, these
Okay.
are the actually processes.
Yes, of course. So, quality assurance has absolutely nothing to do with the deliverable. Mark my words. There is absolutely nothing to do with quality with the deliverable. It does not inspect or test the deliverable at any time. Quality assurance is when you are doing something, you are producing a product or whatever steps you are doing, whether it is internal or external, whatever processes you are involved in, are you doing the right processes or not? It is the audit of the work. It must be some documents you have prepared, you must have documented your process, and you must be following that documented process, or that documented process which you are following might be faulty and that needs to be fixed. This is all the responsibility of quality assurance. Whereas if you are inspecting the deliverable or testing the deliverable at any level, it would be called quality control. And it does not mean that quality control is done at the end of the project before delivery of the product. Quality control has started as soon as you have started doing the unit testing. Internal testing is also quality control. But the quality assurance also continues. Even quality assurance could be for the whole project, or a process, or a bigger process, or a process group. So whenever it is processes we are dealing with, it is quality assurance. And you see, why is it in execution? Because in execution we are performing the work, and how the work should be performed, that must be documented. This is the only one person sitting in execution who is watching everything happening. While the processes are happening, quality assurance is the only person who can interact with those processes and, if need be, correct them.
I have a question.
Gigi?
Sir, this is the level like 8.2 perform quality assurance, where we will apply, certain quality management principles like Sigma levels. If we are running a production house or something, so this is the level, or this is the process actually where we will implement the Six Sigma practices
Okay.
to attain certain. Just confirming that this is the process which will be enriched with Six Sigma.
Six Sigma application on processes will be in quality assurance. Application on, product checking is quality control. Six Sigma is applied everywhere.
Yes, but this is the actual process which will be identified if we are running a production house to fill bottles, or something which is like some bottles are filled with like 300 milliliter, or some are 310 or 320. So we have to adjust the production house, and we have certain policies defined by the different quality management groups or process. So this process will be enriched with that, so that the output will be attained accordingly.
Exactly, you are very right. Quality assurance will fix the processes. There is a process improvement plan which is created with the quality management plan, and that is responsible for putting the bad processes right.
The ISO standards, does it come under the quality control processes?
Ji, Wasif?
The ISO standards.
ISO standard is a standard that just like PMBOK, that is also a standard. That is standard for quality, and therefore that gives us the good practices, right? So yes, of course, we can apply that in performing the quality assurance as well as in quality control. But Six Sigma is a stringent standard. Six Sigma is much better than ISO. Then we have manage communications and manage stakeholder engagement, 10 and 13. And in 12, we have got conduct procurements. Procurements are a little different, because what are we procuring? In planning, when we decided that some of the jobs which have been assigned to us in the project we may not be able to do them, then we do a make or buy decision. We decide which are the tasks we need to outsource, and then we prepare necessary documentation for procurement of those items. And during execution, we will outsource them. That is called conduct procurements. Conduct procurements means that we will advertise in the newspaper, we will deal with the different sellers who would be coming, and we would ultimately be able to select someone and award him the contract. This is our job as far as the conduct procurements are concerned. Later, whatever the contract we have signed with the supplier or the vendor, in monitoring and control, we are going to impose that. We are going to control according to that contract. So coming on to monitoring and control now. In monitoring and control, as we have already understood that every knowledge area has a control. At least one process is there as a control, except for human resource. And for human resource, I have already told you why we do not have a process here. Because human resources cannot be controlled, they can be managed. And management is a thing which should be done during execution. Although this management relies upon the results of monitoring and control, which we will just be creating. Now, in monitoring and control, there is one thing strange, and that is that integration, which usually had only one process in every process group, like in initiation, it has only one process, planning one process, execution one process, closing one process. In monitoring and control, it has two processes. So I would normally call it uh, that in monitoring and control, it has to do two different jobs. One is the monitoring or analysis job, and second is the control. So these two jobs are handled by monitoring and control by integration knowledge area, whereas all other controls represent their respective knowledge area. You see, in scope, we have got two processes, validate scope and control scope. I will explain why there are two different scopes here. Then we have got control schedule, control cost, control quality, control communications, and so on and so forth. All controls are there. Now let me get back to the integration. Why there are two things? You see, remember that integration is the parent of all the other 9 knowledge areas. That is exactly why this is the only knowledge area. Integration is the only knowledge area which has some processes available in every process group. Do let me know if this is true for any other knowledge area. You see, in integration is here, and here, in all 5. None of the other have presence in all the process groups. Even procurement doesn't have initiation process. Stakeholder doesn't have a closing process. And all others have missing areas. Whereas integration is everywhere. That means whether you like it or not, integration is the parent of them all. If you are doing initiation, charter is in charge. If you are doing planning, project management plan is in charge. If you are doing execution, direct and managed project work is in charge of all execution. In monitoring and control, we have two different works, two different charges. One is the chief analyst and the other is the chief controller. The chief analyst we call monitor and control project work, which is in charge of all the controls. And if there is any change request, if there is any change to be brought in, there must be a change request. Integrated change control is the process which receives all the change requests no matter from where they are coming, and it is responsible to process them. So this is what the explanation for two processes in monitoring and control from integration are concerned. Then let's talk about scope. You remember when we develop the scope, we talk about the product and the work. The basic thing is the product. So first we determine the scope of the product. And once the requirements are clarified, we don't start planning things until and unless we know what to do. So first we have to have the requirements. So we had a product scope before we could develop a project scope. Product scope is about the deliverable, and product scope is checked in 5.5 validate scope. This is like the user acceptance testing. This is the final check on the product. As far as monitoring and control is concerned, there are only two processes, quality control and validate scope, which are allowed to inspect the deliverable. No other process out of these can deal with deliverable. So when a deliverable comes from execution into monitoring and control, it goes directly straight away to the quality control. If quality control passes it, it is called a verified deliverable. This verified deliverable will then go to validate scope for second inspection, and this is the user acceptance testing. And if it passes this inspection, then it is ready to be handed over to the customer. This is called accepted deliverable. As far as the control is concerned, control scope is responsible for the project scope, the work which has been done, how well it has been done as per scope. Control schedule, how timely our work has been done and what measures are to be taken. Similarly, control cost. As far as quality control is concerned, I have already talked about it. This deals with the deliverable. Quality assurance deals with the process, and quality assurance is the only process which deals with live processes. The controls do not deal with live processes. When the processes are happening, only quality assurance can interact with them. When an activity is done, only then controls take charge and do the post-mortem and see how well it has been done according to their perspective, the scope perspective, the time perspective, the cost perspective, and so on and so forth. Communication will take control the communication according to its perspective. Control risk, control procurement, control stakeholder. So all the controls are basically checking how well the execution is executing the plan. If there is some variation, it is the responsibility of these controls to take action. And if there is a need to bring the change, they all can move change request. And I told you that all the change requests ultimately reach 4.5, perform integrated change control. So what we learn from monitoring and control, there are only two processes which deal with the deliverable. Deliverable comes first to quality control, gets verified, goes to validate scope, gets accepted. As far as the work is concerned, from direct and manage project work, which is responsible for integrated execution of scope, time, and cost. So when it will perform the work, some data will be generated out of it. That is called work performance data. That work performance data is sent to every control. All the controls will get a copy of the work performance data. It is the raw data generated from execution. Each control has its respective management plan available with it. Every control checks the work performance data against the respective management plan, scope management plan, schedule management plan, cost management plan, whatever the plan is, the relevant plan, it is checked against the relevant plan. And if it is not according to the relevant plan, if there is a variation, then it analyzes that variation. How harmful is that? If the harm is affecting the scope, our time, our cost, only then the change request, it is a fit case for change request. No matter the analysis being done by control communication, or control risk, or control procurement, the key is if there is any change in scope, time, or cost baselines, only then change request will be initiated. So there are two things coming out of these controls, all of these controls. Number one is the analyzed data. That is called information. So every control will churn out, after processing, work performance information. They will receive work performance data from execution, and they will churn out work performance information, which is the processed data after the analysis. All the work performance information is sent to 4.4, which I said it is the chief analyst. So all the controls will send it to this chief analyst. So this will compile all the work performance informations into a report, which is called work performance report. So here the work performance report will be created. If there is any change request from any of these processes, all the change requests will be received by 4.5, perform integrated change control. This is responsible for processing all the change requests. And you see, deliverable is being checked at quality control and scope, validate scope. Processes or work is being checked by all the controls. And if something is not right, it is always the change request which will be responsible for amending the remaining project management plan and intimating execution as to the improvement or new version of the project management plan. The approved change requests are sent back to execution, and this cycle will continue between execution and monitoring and control until and unless the requirements are completely met. All the work has been done, all the product has been accepted. If that be the case, we lose out to the closing process group. Here we only have two processes. Parent process is close project R phase, which is overall responsible. This is integration. And under it, we just need to close out all the contracts we have given out. So close procurement will ensure all the contracts have been satisfactorily being settled, and close project will ensure that all the work we have done ourselves have also been satisfactorily settled. This is from here, the deliverable is handed over to the customer, and all the assets of this project are sent back to organizational process assets, and the project is completed and closed. After the project is closed, there is nothing outstanding. We do not have anything left in the project. There is no more. Project finishes. Right. How much have you understood?
Sir, I have understood, I can say 80%, 90% maybe.
Wonderful. That is really very good. Atif?
Yeah.
Yes. Ji shayad.
Sir, I have a query with reference to the risk management plan. You mentioned about PMBOK 5, and then you gave an example for PMBOK 6 also. I just want to clarify that, we identify risk, we do the analysis, it could be the qualitative or the quantitative, and then based on that, we made a risk plan. Now, obviously, as you have mentioned earlier, that we cannot execute risk. Risk is not something to be executed. We do not know. We cannot control it. I'm sorry, we can control it, but we don't know when it will be executed. Now, the question is that risk could be of two types. It could lead to opportunity as well as it could lead to threat. Now, as far as Framework 5 is concerned, where is the level or at what stage we will be able to identify that this risk is an opportunity or is it a threat? We will be able to identify it in 11.6 or
11.2
with reference to
11.2 is responsible for identifying the opportunities and threats. So positive or negative risks are
sir.
identified here, and respective plans are created here for opportunities and threats both. And in control,
Sir, fine. At this level, we will mitigate it, depend on the positive and negative risk. But certain type of risk are identified during the line of action.
okay,
Yeah.
This is a continuous process. Planning is a continuous process. When you start identifying the risks,
Okay.
you keep identifying the risk throughout the end of the life. And this is continuous.
Yes. Okay, sir. And PMBOK 6, you mentioned that they have added one more process in executing. So,
Yes.
what is the exact role of that process?
This
I
is
mean, I'm debating the subject, but just out of curiosity.
this is execute risk response plan. That is rather than control risk, asking direct and manage project work to execute the response, that there would be a direct process here in execution which will invoke on the orders of control risk. Control risk will tell execute risk response to execute.
Okay. All right.
Right? Anyone else with any problem? Because this was important. I know this is not enough discussion, but I will be discussing it so many times that you will, be 100% clear. And I actually want you to be 100% clear. It should be on your fingertips. Whatever is happening in this diagram, this should be in your fingertips. Actually, this is not the only diagram. We will be talking on two other charts, and then it will be further more clarified. So if we are okay with the table, I can proceed ahead.
Sir, do we have to memorize this entire table with the numbers and input and output?
Not at all. Not at all. If you can understand it,
Okay.
there is no need to memorize it. Just understand how things are flowing. There are some basic laws, the basic principles you must understand. So I have already mentioned most of those things. One rule is integration
Yes.
has to be everywhere in all the 5 process groups, right? No other process will have its presence in all the 5 process groups. If you look at the columns, you see that there is no role of other processes than integration and stakeholder. In closing, there is no role of any process except integration and procurement. So you set your rules to understand it, not to memorize it. Everybody comfortable?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I don't discuss on these tables because it is better and easier to discuss on the bigger table. Here, we just have to, move up and down. That's why. Otherwise, I have created this chart which is zoomable. You can move into the processes if we are discussing each one of them. But naturally, we have discussed them all, and I would rather move on to the next thing. Now, let me give you a quick overview of how these 5 process groups, initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, control, and close, are interacting with each other. Let me give you this in a quick format, and tomorrow we can further expand on that. You see, if you look at this diagram, we have got some gray boxes. And these gray boxes are the process groups. The processes are not indicated here. Consider these gray boxes as kind of black box kind of a thing. You can't see inside what is there. So these are the gray boxes: initiation, planning, execution. The long box on the right is monitoring and control, and the bottom one is closing. Now we will not discuss the processes within each one of these process groups, but what we want to do is we want to establish what is needed to do each one of these processes, what goes in and what goes out, and what is the function of each process group. So interaction of the process groups, not the processes. Secondly, you notice that there are black lines and there are gray lines. Black lines are the interactions between two process groups. If initiation is sending something to planning, it would be a black line. If planning is sending something to monitoring and control, it will be black line. So process group to process group, they will be always black lines. Then we have got certain external entities. The boxes are like, on top left corner, project initiator or sponsor. This is a different kind of a box. These boxes are external entities. This one, then the enterprise and the organization, then the customer, and then the seller. There are 4 such boxes. And moreover, we also have another document kind of box in the center of the chart, which is written project documents. This is the planning documents we have created and they are being reused, but this is not a process group, therefore this is also treated as an external entity. So all of these 5 items, 4 external entities and 1 document, all the interaction with them would be shown by gray arrows. You see anything going from any of these boxes to process groups is gray box, gray line. Similarly, project documents, all the lines coming in and out of it are gray lines. Okay, are we clear about this much?
Yes, sir.
This was the convention. Now, let us start initiation. When we start initiation, what do we need to have? All the arrows getting into initiation process group. There is 1 arrow, 2 arrow, and 3 arrows. They are getting into it. Let us forget about the black arrow and talk about these 2 gray arrows. So these are the major inputs getting into the initiating process group. What are they? The external entity is initiator or sponsor. This is the person who is coming in the project initiation process group to give you the order, give the project manager the order to start the project. He comes armed with 3 documents. He already has 3 documents. He does not create these 3 documents. This he has brought from the company. One is project statement of work. Then is the business case. And then is the agreement. These are 3 documents already available with the project sponsor, and he is carrying them inside initiating process group, and here he will perform the ordering process. He will authorize the project manager. He will select the project manager. He will authorize the project manager to do this project, and he will give him a written charter. And that charter would be created based on these 3 documents. Moreover, as you remember, organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors, which we have already studied, they are coming from the enterprise or the organization. They are being input. So if we have to create a charter here, then probably the format of the charter would be available in organizational process assets. Maybe there are some cultural factors or some weather or environmental factors which may be affecting the writing of the charter, So we will accept those things as input. So these are 3 plus 2, 5 inputs getting into initiating process group, and there is one thing coming from planning, and that is project document. That is also considered as an input, but we will talk about it a little later. So based on these five inputs, the project sponsor has to write the project charter and assign it to the project manager. Once the project manager gets that, he would naturally get some clarifications. He would ask some questions, and when he has a preliminary scope established in his mind, he is clear what he's supposed to be doing. Only then he will look around to find and identify who all are the stakeholders, who all are the people who are affected by this project or who can affect this project. So he will go and identify all of those stakeholders. He will create a list of those stakeholders, and he may also, categorize and analyze those stakeholders as if he can develop a strategy to deal with various categories of these stakeholders. So this is what is supposed to be done in initiation. No planning, no detailed understanding of the project, nothing more. This is enough to do in initiation. So the things coming out of it to the planning, one is the project charter going to planning, and the other is the stakeholder register and stakeholder management strategy. These things enter into planning. Once we do the planning, there is a lot of planning to be done because we have got 24 processes in planning. Out of the total 47, 24 processes are in planning. That means more than 50% of the processes exist alone in planning. Therefore, this is a very sensitive job. This is a very carefully done job. Planning should be very elaborate as possible. But I will not go into the detail of the planning. I will just say the end result of this planning would be a comprehensive, properly integrated project management plan, which is going out of it. And where it is going, a copy of it is going to monitoring and control, a copy of it is going to execution, and a copy of it is going to closing. So it is going to all remaining process groups, all remaining 3 process groups, they all receive a copy of project management plan. Moreover, it also does something else. Planning will also decide which are the jobs we cannot do ourselves. Okay, before I start explaining that, let me get back to initiation and let me explain these 3 documents which initiator has brought along with him. Can someone explain what is a project statement of work?
So it is the original scope or the uh, requirement from the end user.
And who creates it?
Sir, usually it is from the customer side, but sometimes the vendor side, they also prepare it.
Okay.
It is the SRS or it has different names.
SRS is a detailed requirement. This is just a statement of work. So this is different from SRS. Statement of work. You were right in the first place. This is coming from direct from the source, the customer who needs this job to be done. When he realizes, as soon as the customer realizes that they need something to be done, they cannot do it themselves. At that point, this decision whether we can do it or we cannot do it or we have to get it done from outside, this decision is called make or buy decision. So our customer has reached this make or buy decision, and they have decided that this job cannot be done by themselves. Therefore, they want someone else to do it. So at that point, they made a make or buy decision. The immediate next step after making the make or buy decision is to write a statement of work. So the customer writes a statement of work, which is not a very detailed document. This could be a layman requirement of what he needs to get done. It may not have a lot of requirements and everything, but it could be a very brief layman statement. This statement of work becomes the basis. Yes,
Yes, sir. Understood, sir.
this statement of work created by the customer becomes the basis for all the procurement documents. They want to prepare the RFP, RFQ, tender notice, quotation, or whatever. So all those documents would actually be based on this statement of work, and they may be more detailed. Once they have created those documents, they will advertise.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, please.
The cost and timelines, they're also included in that?
Yes, they can indicate when they want this job done. That would be considered as constraints.
Okay.
So the customer then gets involved into the process of procurement, and they ultimately call for various proposals. Many vendors come to them, and ultimately we also are interested. How do we know that we are interested? Maybe we are invited by the vendor to bid for it. Maybe we saw the advertisement in the newspaper. We normally in companies have got a business intelligence section, which is supposed to keep watch on all such opportunities. And then they develop a business case for anything our company should be involved in. We want to bid for that proposal, for that RFP. We will first create a business case whether we should do it or we should not do it. Is it beneficial for the organization or not? This is called my business case. So my company has developed a business case. Based on that business case, we prepared the proposal and sent it to the customer. And luckily, we were selected. Ultimately, we were awarded the contract. So the third document, agreement, is the agreement or the contract. So you see, all of these things have already been done. Before the sponsor has been asked to start the project. These things are already done. Statement of work is existing from the customer side. Business case, our business intelligence or business analysts have created already, and we already have an agreement with the customer. And project initiator has been told to start this project as an executive. So he gets in the initiating process group, bringing along these three documents. And in light of these three documents and the enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets, he will create the charter. What is a charter? Charter is an authorization given to the project manager by the project sponsor to mobilize the resources and start work. As I said, when he gives the charter, naturally, project manager, if new, will have a lot of queries. He will ask certain questions. And when his mind is a bit clarified, he doesn't need to be 100% clarified because it will be done later during the planning process. But right now, he must understand the statement of the charter. Once he understands the charter, he will not start planning immediately. He is supposed to first look for all the stakeholders, identify them, and create a list of all the stakeholders and analyze them and create categories of stakeholders and some management strategy how to deal with different categories of stakeholders. This is to be done in initiation by the project manager. So the very first responsibility of project manager is to create this stakeholder register and strategy. These things will get into planning. Now, coming over to planning, you understand now what a statement of work is. Now I am going to talk something similar to that. Now, the work we have got through this contract or agreement, we are responsible to do it. But certain jobs in that work, we find during the planning, we are not capable of doing ourselves. Maybe there could be three reasons. Maybe we do not have the capability to do that job. Maybe we do not have the capacity to do that job, or maybe it is too risky. So when we decide that a certain activity or group of activities or tasks cannot be done by ourselves and has to be outsourced, this is our make or buy decision. Just like the customer has taken a make or buy decision, we will also do a make or buy decision. We will also create a statement of work for each such decision. We will also create the procurement documents. These are going up to initiation. Why? Because during the identification of stakeholders, it should be considered that these procurement documents may require certain outside companies to be bidding for us. So they are also our stakeholders. So that's why I'm sending the procurement documents from planning to initiation, as if when the identification of stakeholders is being carried out, our selected sellers, our pre-qualified sellers should also be identified. Then we also develop during our planning a source selection criteria, how we will select our contractors. What is the mechanism, scoring and ranking system, whatever that is, that also is designed here. So I think I should close down here. I have explained to you what is coming out of it. Product documents are coming out of it, project plan is coming out of it, and make or buy decision and selection criteria is coming out of it and going to the execution. There are few arrows here. This arrow, gray arrow, is from organizational processes and enterprise environmental factor coming from the organization. So they will go everywhere. You see, they are also going to monitoring and control. They are also going to execution. They are also going to closing. So these two things are going everywhere. So this one is for that. This arrow is coming from jointly coming from the organization and the customer. We might have certain jobs in this contract which will be done jointly by us and our customer. So we must have some teaming agreements as if to define the roles and responsibilities of both parties. So these teaming agreements will also be required for planning. Then the customer will be giving the requirement that is also required. And lastly, another arrow which is going down here and then going up here, this is called resource calendars. All those resources we need to mobilize during planning, their resource calendar, their availability will be noted in the resource calendar. So resource calendar is also coming in there. These are the things due to which we create the project management plan. Last but not the least, there are two things we create out of project management plan. One is the project management plan itself, and the other is the project documents. I will differentiate between these two tomorrow, and we will move ahead with execution. Any questions so far?
So just one thing, it is my raw guess, or as far as the explanation is concerned, I think you have mentioned that these are the integration. In the previous slide, you mentioned the top integration knowledge area processes are the head processes of each process group.
Yeah.
So I think these are the outputs of only those process group, the head process group. Is it right or wrong?
Essentially, yes, but not exactly, because everything
Not
which is
exactly.
moving between these process groups has been shown here. Has been shown here.
Yeah.
Everything.
Okay. Okay.
This chart is the heart and soul of project management. This is everything.
Hmm.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, I hope it is not troublesome today. It was a tough lecture, huh?
Very interesting.
It was quite demanding.
Sir,
Okay. Yes.
one thing,
Yep.
yeah. So did you get a chance to look at the email I sent you?
I think I did. I not respond to that. I'll
No, sir.
I'll look at it again and I'll reply.
Okay. 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 Okay.
Okay, I think we should call it a day. Thank you very much for everything, and see you tomorrow at the same time. Thank you and take care.
Thank you, sir.
Inshallah.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Assalamu alaikum.